Three, two, one. All right, welcome to the second ever Utah Stories podcast. My name is Rich Marcosian. I'm the editor and publisher of Utah Stories magazine. So we're talking about going to pot. Utah is going to pot. And it's not a question of if anymore. This is the critical thing you got to know. It is going to happen. It's the Utah State House Speaker, Greg Hughes, has assured me that this is going to happen. It's a done deal. The LDS Church has agreed to get behind the bill. That's all it really takes for a bill to pass in Utah. And so legalize cannabis for medical patients. But I'm going to tell you, as I explained in the last video, why this bill is fraught with poison pills. Why this bill is really kind of, in my estimation, not a complete sham, because it will be better than nothing. But as I explained in a little teaser video, it is by and large garbage. It's probably the worst cannabis bill ever produced in the history of all bills related to medical marijuana. But first, before I get to that, I'm going to go over a couple of things. If you haven't heard of the Made in Utah Festival, it's associated with Utah Stories, you got to go. It's going to be amazing. So what we do at Utah Stories is we're all about supporting local entrepreneurs, local makers, local businesses, because in our estimation, the best way to live the most free, independent, self-reliant lifestyle is to both be an entrepreneur if you're able to. Not everybody's able to, which is okay. Have your own source of revenue, but also support local makers and support people who are out trying to forge their own destiny, create businesses, and live a lifestyle that is indicative of where we live. And I think that, even going back to when the Mormon pioneers came out west, it was all about freedom and liberty from tyrannical power. And so we should honor that tradition by understanding that our sovereignty is kind of a big word. It means our ability to self-govern is totally dependent upon where streams of revenue come in and where they go out. And the more we support giant corporations, the more we support chain stores and big boxes, which are all fine and good. I don't attack those things. But the more we support them, the more we depend on them, and the less we are self-reliant. And so that's just a kind of a key concept of Utah Stories magazine and what we're all about. And so going to the Made in Utah Festival and doing your Christmas shopping there is a great way to honor both the integrity of the spirit of the traditions of the West, and also to honor small business owners, makers, entrepreneurs' ability to create their own wealth. So with that said, let's get right into it. I want to start off with a clip I want to play for you that I think very well describes what is the problem with this bill. This is coming from a lady who is named Christine Stenquist. She operates the Trust Patient Advocacy Group for Medical Cannabis. So she's advocating cannabis for all of her patients, and I'm just going to play the end of the clip for you now.
But I'm concerned about the cost. You do this, and we are going to have to go back to the illegal market or to the states next door, which means what? This program was born in fear and designed to fail. So I hope that we don't over-regulate to the point we can't actually get access.
So it's not really my estimation that this program was born in fear and designed to fail. That is the estimation of Christine Stenquist. So let's go into how it was born in fear and designed to fail, the medical marijuana cannabis program. So the problem is the church only decided in the 11th hour that they believed the patients. They recently came across a guy by the name of Nathan Frodsham, who is extremely professional, well put together, has a perfect family, personifies all the great values of what great LDS members are all about. And so only when they listened to him and other patients did the church come on board. And I'm very glad I ran into Mr. Frodsham. He's been written about on KSL News, on KUTV. Let's just hear the end of what he had to say in my interview with him.
Once they knew the science, and once they knew people were suffering, and once they knew how it could be solved, I think they wanted to see if they could fix Prop 2.
They
but
is
Prop
the
2
church.
people didn't want to do that, and that's where the compromise came about. They said, let's do something, and they got together with these guys. And so, in my view, they're the unsung hero. I mean, they did it all in the background. They didn't look for any credit. They just got all of these enemies together. They got the UMA, they got law enforcement, they got the legislature, they got the opposition. They pulled them all together and said...
So what Mr. Frodsham's talking about, they are the church, the LDS Church. They basically, he says, are the unsung heroes. I wouldn't go that far with it. I think that just 2 months ago, we were hearing from Mitt Romney that if Proposition 2 passes, we're going to see brownies laced with marijuana. We're going to see THC in gummy bears. It's going to get into schools. Kids are going to consume it. And that was just straight, deliberate fear tactics. And while Mitt Romney was saying all that, we saw Proposition 2 support escalate. And I think what really happened was that the church was avoiding a potential total PR disaster because nobody wants to be lied to. And there is unquestionable evidence of the efficacy of using cannabinoids to treat epilepsy, Parkinson's, appetite problems, pain, and that not only is it more effective than other mainstream pharmaceutical drugs, there's fewer side effects. And so if you didn't see episode 1, I would highly suggest you go back, check it out, and watch episode 1, because I kind of go into my own personal understanding and my own sort of evolution in my change in beliefs concerning marijuana, because I wasn't by nature an advocate of widespread legalization until I understood the science. And all of the science is out there now. They're doing incredible scientific work in Israel, in Spain, and it's actually an amazing drug. And our endocannabinoid system is something I encourage all the state legislators who are going to be voting on the compromise bill to understand. And so my belief is if the state legislature knows more about this, then everybody would be way better off. But it's basically up to the state legislature, because right now the bill is, I believe, definitely designed to fail. So how is it designed to fail? Let me get to that now. Let's look at the problem. So the compromise bill, if you didn't know, Proposition 2 is one thing. The compromise bill is the bill that will actually pass. The state legislature is not in any position where they have to pass what our voter referendum tells them to pass. They still have discretion. So the compromise bill is already written. It's already in a draft form. And it's a parallel bill based on Proposition 2. You can read the article, which I'm going to be referencing up on our website at utahstories.com. But let's look at a few things. So the state is proposing an idea that is unlike anything else in the entire United States. They want to do something called a central fill. What is a central fill? It's basically one single building full of workers who are going through every single medical cannabis, we won't call it prescription, but order, and examining that, probably putting some kind of state seal on it, like they do at the DABC, and then shipping it out to the 5 medical cannabis pharmacies there will be to service the entire state of Utah, which is far too low, but also the walk-up facilities that will also have medical cannabis that people will be able to get. So this giant state facility, absolutely unnecessary. it will have to service 30,000 patients every single month. And they said, I was able, this is the really cool thing. Senator Vickers actually called me back. I was very happy about that. Kudos to Senator Vickers. I was told this is his idea. This is his brainchild. And so I wanted to understand what it is that he likes about this idea so much and why it is he's pursuing it. And so what I found out was that he believes this is so important because it's the only way rural communities will be serviced with the medical marijuana they need by the state so generously providing to them their medical cannabis needs. This is absolute BS. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put it. If they simply allowed more medical cannabis pharmacies, more than 5 private medical cannabis pharmacies, every single rural area in Utah could easily be serviced by the free market. The problem is the church, at the behest of the church, I believe Senator Vickers is doing this, because I said to him, did you come up with this idea yourself, or was the church responsible for this idea? His answer was, you're going to have to ask the church that question. So the church does not trust the free market with medical marijuana, even with really tough restrictions. Like, I can understand why we don't have a completely free market, although I bet you that will happen in just the next few years. But why can't the church trust more than 5 medical cannabis pharmacies? It's because they want to control medical marijuana as if it's the same thing as alcohol. And to compare something that patients are needing as medicine to get off opioids, to replace antidepressants, to replace hardcore, super side effect inducing medication with something like medical marijuana should be a worthy goal. It's not the same as alcohol, and the church needs to get that out of their mind. Certainly, there will be people falsifying their information and their pain level to get medical marijuana cards. You're not going to stop that, just like you would never be able to stop people falsifying pain and information to get opioids. That's not going to be stopped. It's going to be up to the discretion of doctors, just as it is with opioids. And so I would really hope that some state legislatures might see this video, because if you understand the medical endocannabinoid system, you won't question that indeed it is medicine, and it's a far more effective medicine for so many people. All right, I want to play for you a clip that I think epitomizes the whole debate over, will this really be effective in helping our opioid crisis in Utah and perhaps replacing opioids for pain and suffering? And so I want to play for you a brain tumor patient.
Tumor, so it's inoperable. I have a headache and have had a headache every day for 16 years. It turned 16 this month. Happy birthday. But from the time I was 8, have been on some form of opioid. I could get 60 tabs of morphine and 120 tabs of tramadol a month as a teenager. And so you're talking about wanting to keep the public safe. The public isn't safe. It's not.
I work in that space. I'm no friend of big pharma and opioids.
Right. So we have this addiction problem, and in states where cannabis has been legalized, it has dropped about 25%. With only 5 dispensaries, you talked about the rural areas, Price, Utah, huge heroin problem, huge.
Okay, so what she's saying there is, especially in rural areas in Utah, there is a huge heroin problem instigated by opioids. So if you don't know much about the opioid crisis, most people who end up using heroin, they start with opioids. The doctor prescribes to them an opioid prescription. They get addicted. heroin is about 8 times cheaper than opioids to get high from. So they switch over. Now we have this giant heroin epidemic. And what she is saying is that in areas that adopt legalized cannabis and replace a prescription for cannabis instead of an opioid, there's a 25% reduction in heroin and opioid abuse. So this is a game changer. This could greatly help rural communities if you don't design this bill to fail. So I think there should be a special provision. Here's what I would suggest to the state legislature. There should be a special provision to allow smaller grow facilities and more medical marijuana pharmacies on a smaller scale. So have 2 different tiers of licenses. So what I really originally didn't like we speak on behalf of entrepreneurs and farmers, is that I don't know of any entrepreneurs personally who could take advantage of farming in medical cannabis, because there's only going to be 5 or 20 grow licenses. I did the math. With 20 cultivators providing for 30,000 patients, each cultivator will have to provide for 1,500 patients individually. If they're doing that, each patient needs anywhere from 1 to 2 ounces per month, each cultivator will have to have around 10,000 square feet of grow space for the 20 licenses they're giving out. I found out, I can show this to you who are watching it in video form. I found a website that actually shows the typical, what greenhouse yields are for the best growers, and you can know that about each crop is 400 pounds. So 10,000 square feet of greenhouse space will produce 1 ton of flower per year. So that's another way it's designed to operate in the realm of crony capitalism, because if there's only a total of 20 grower licenses, who do you think are the only ones who are going to be able to provide 7 to 10,000 square feet of greenhouse space? It's the existing players. It's the ones who are the biggest and the most successful in other states who are going to be able to come into Utah, already know how to grow, already be established, and we're basically going to be taking money out of our pockets, giving it to them to supply our needs. And just so you know, you can't transport medical cannabis over state lines yet because it's still federally illegal. I cannot see that any farmer in Utah who's not associated with either big ag or big money, some big pharma, is going to be able to really compete in this arena unless they have a ton of money. I think you're going to need about $3 million to start a medical cannabis grow facility. But the church could change all that. They could say, okay, to service rural communities where the opioid epidemic has hit the hardest, we can open up the market by allowing smaller cultivators. We could have second-tier cultivators where you still have to do it indoors. It still has to be protected, still has to be highly regulated, but we'll allow for maybe a maximum of 200 plants. At the level that these 20 will have to operate at, they'll probably have to have somewhere around 1,500 plants. So anyway, I see that as basically being a completely rigged system to help the biggest players, and those state legislators who are going to be, or the people who are going to be determining who gets the permits, are going to be in a position where they could so easily take bribes and so easily become corrupt. Because if there's wiggle room in deciding who gets something over someone else, being able to pick winners over losers, that puts a politician in a position where they can easily become corrupt. And I looked into it, did a Google search of corruption in medical cannabis growing licenses, and it's something like 1,700,000 results. It's happening all over the country already. So why not do something that could prevent that? Okay, so I want to point out to you a Forbes article so we kind of could get a better idea of how the medical cannabis, how the cannabis industry is playing out nationwide. Wall Street has kind of been sitting on the sidelines while medical cannabis has taken off because it is still federally illegal. That's changing. Now that it's legal in Canada, Wall Street is definitely taking notice, and Wall Street wants to be part of this coming green rush. And so, for example, Pennsylvania, with 13 million people, they granted only 13 licenses, growing licenses. Florida, with a population of 20 million, granted only 7 cultivator licenses. While Ohio, with 11 million people, granted 12. New York, 20 million, they granted 5. Now New York has 10. So this isn't uncommon, but Colorado is the big exception. They have 1,400 licenses for cultivators with a population of 5.5 million. So competition for these limited permits is fierce, and those companies fortunate enough to win, see sky-high values attached to the licenses even before they become operational. In Florida, a coveted cultivation dispensary license sold for $40 million before the company had seen a dime in revenue. So here's what it is. You win a lottery. You win a lottery if you get a cultivator license, if you get a medical pharmacy license. So let's address that question with another clip. I'm posing that question to DJ Shantz, who is the, actually, I got to put it back here. He's basically the campaign director for Utah Patients Coalition. And people were talking about how they're worried the price is going to be too high, which would cause the black market still to thrive. And, nobody wants to see that. A big part of the bill that I see being a problem in driving down costs is the cost to become a grower requires $250,000 of liquid capital on hand. And then to be a processor, you need $50,000 of liquid capital. Don't you see that as being an impediment in having a nice, fair, open market and not having barriers, artificial barriers to entry?
The bill is an impediment to an open market. As a free market guy.
Well, if you want to drive down costs and you want to increase supply, why not? Why have that huge barrier? Why not allow local farmers? Why not allow the farmer right over here, rural medical
If you
marijuana?
have a limited number of, so how many? I can't tell you how many. How many times do you think I'm called a day asking, hey, I want a dispensary or I want to grow? I can tell you it's multiple times every day.
How many dreams are you crushing on a daily basis?
Well, multiple times a day, I'm getting a phone call asking about, I want a dispensary, I want to grow, I want to.
Well, it's a potentially like $400 million industry coming here. It's a giant industry coming to.
We're not going to have a
Utah.
lack of people that want licenses for this. So if there's a limited number of licenses, let's say 20 for grows, 10 for dispensaries, how would you suggest we try to find the best business people to run these?
Lotto.
No. I think you examine their farming background. Like if they're an established farmer, like there's lots of farmers in Vineyard who used to farm crops, and now that's very difficult, and they'd like to find jobs probably.
If you want a McDonald's franchise, how much liquid cash do you have to have?
I don't know.
Over $1 million to get a franchise. So if you're the state and you want to figure out who's going to be the most economically viable candidate, who can follow through, who has a background in business, who has because businesses cost money.
Okay, so already we're comparing having a grow facility, which requires industrial agriculture experience, to owning a McDonald's franchise. Really. You heard them chanting, lotto, lotto. It is going to be a lottery. It's a lottery where only the rich and the biggest and the best who are already established can win. And so I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somehow there will be some local entrepreneurs who can come up with the funding, come up with the plan, and get approval. Maybe there's going to be a few in there. But why not make it all in there? Why not create this as a giant local economic benefit? Because when you have farmers producing crops locally, we become less dependent on petrochemicals, on gasoline. Our prices for food are less dependent on imports. When we have local sovereignty involved, we have more control over our own destiny as a state. Why not have that be a motive and an ambition of state leaders? I'd really like to know why they don't hold that as a priority. So I'm going to wrap this up. I've got a whole bunch more clips. I'm going to put these clips in a separate video so that you can watch them. It's the voices of the patients that you need to be listening to. That should be the motivation of the legislators in understanding this can solve a lot of problems for Utah. This can solve problems that we're suffering right now with this opioid crisis. And do your research into the endocannabinoid system. Understand that this medical marijuana is not new. It's the most ancient medicine known to man. Look at how the ancient Chinese used it. Look at how extensively it was used in the 1800s. Mormon pioneers were very likely using it. So my last call to action is pick up our Utah Stories November issue. We've got an article all about it. Support all of our amazing local advertisers in here. Utah Stories is completely dependent on local advertisers, and it's all thanks to them that we're able to investigate these subjects, get down to the truth, and bring the truth to you, the reader, listener, watcher. And with that, I hope that you can come to our Made in Utah Festival. Remember, mark your calendars. It's December 14th through the 16th. The kickoff party is December 14th. We only have 300 tickets where we'll be able to sell for that kickoff party, where you can sample all of these amazing craft brewers, craft cocktails, local downtown restaurants. It's such an awesome event. We were told by some people that we have the best VIP experience in the state of Utah. I was told that by somebody who goes to a lot of like VIP deals. You can buy a ticket for this event for $45, but they're not on sale yet. Stay tuned. Subscribe to Utah Stories newsletter or this YouTube channel, and you can get more information about that. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching our second episode of the Utah Stories podcast. Please subscribe. Please share this with your friends. Let's help local journalism grow. Let's help local sovereignty increase. Let's make Utah a better place.